Nowadays, the only time you're likely to see a caribou is on a quarter, and that includes people who study species at risk. This animal was once so plentiful that it numbered in the millions, spanning the breadth of Canada.
The forest that I'm standing in is part of the Argonaut Creek drainage, and it's about an hour and a half north of Revelstoke. This forest is home to an endangered herd of southern mountain caribou, but it's one of the strongest herds in BC with 150 members. But the forest that I'm standing in and this old growth beautiful habitat is about to be auctioned off by the BC government's own logging agency called BC Timber Sales, or BCTS. And we're here to stop that from happening.
BC Timber Sales is trying to auction off this old-growth forest, even though it's in identified critical habitat of the endangered North Columbia caribou herd. And not only is it in federally mapped critical habitat, but this drainage is speckled with caribou telemetry data, which suggests caribou use this area. As you can see behind me, BC Timber Sales has already built a road into old-growth forest. The North Columbia herd is known to spend upwards of 50% of the year in low-elevation habitat, many areas of which are unprotected from logging and other forms of resource extraction.
My question is, if the BC government's own logging agency supports logging in critical habitat, how do we expect private corporations to do any better for species at risk? This summer, the BC government announced funding to help restore caribou habitat. And specifically, within this area, they committed $33,000 to help recover and restore this habitat, which is amazing work and really needs to be done. But while the back of the drainage is actively being restored, on the front of the drainage, just a few kilometers away, the BC government is punching in a new road into critical habitat for caribou, and they're planning to log that old growth forest. This is one of the most ill-advised, counterproductive, and bizarre strategies I've ever heard of. Because while the government is actively restoring habitat on one side, they're sabotaging caribou on the other by destroying the habitat that they rely on.
Mountain caribou are a keystone species that require large tracts of intact and connected habitat for their survival. In 2014, the Federal Wildlife Advisory Panel listed the central mountain population and the southern mountain population as endangered, and this was a direct result of a threat from resource extraction, including logging, mining, oil and gas, and the building of Forest Service roads. The trees here are ancient old-growth forest, and they're what caribou rely on for survival, for food, for shelter, and for protection from predators. Caribou rely heavily on lichen that grows only on old-growth trees. These low-elevation forests are ecologically significant and irreplaceable.
The past decades of industrial activity, habitat loss, habitat destruction, and pollution have hit wildlife hard, to say the least. It's the reason that over 1 million wildlife species are facing extinction if we don't take drastic action now. Caribou are one of those species. In Canada, caribou could be one of the first species that we lose forever. And how we deal with caribou today will set a precedent for how we deal with future species facing extinction. This incredible forest and other habitats like it contain within them a future for caribou. And this habitat in old-growth forest is worth so much more standing. In the Peace Valley region of BC, West Moberly and Saulteaux First Nations are leading the way in caribou recovery. They've implemented a project that actually protects habitat. They've shown us what it takes to save caribou and what we can and must do to save these herds.
We need your help today. Tell the BC government to leave the Argonaut Creek drainage intact.
Tell them to cancel the auction of these cutblocks and protect the habitat of the North Columbia caribou herd.